Hi guys, and welcome to your Tuesday English lesson. And we're going to go on to something completely different now. It's completely change it up again. I hope you enjoyed the unit all about the whales and the trying to persuade humans to change their ways. And I'm be looking through your writing that you've done on that. I know I've had lots of good discussions with you guys about that. But we're going to move on to something different now, and we're going to move on to writing a narrative, which is a little story. And it's going to actually be based, we're going to base it on a fairy tale that I'm sure most of you all know from when you were much younger. It says on the screen there, who can remember the story of Little Red Riding Hood? Which I'm sure you will remember. But if you don't, I'm going to go summarise it in a second for you. What we'll be doing is we're going to retell a narrative from a different perspective. So we're not going to write the actual story of Little Red Riding Hood as it's sort of known in common folklore, but we're going to write our own version with a slight twist, okay, and make it a little bit year sixy as well. Okay, so Little Red Riding Hood, those you can remember, here is a summary of Little Red Riding Hood. All right, just a very quick summary. And basically, once upon a time, there was a little girl. Her grandmother gave her a red riding hood, and the girl loved it so much she wore it all the time. So everybody started to call her Little Red Riding Hood. That's where it comes from. One day, her mother told the girl her grandmother had fallen ill. Because she lived alone deep in the woods, she would probably be happy to get some food and a visit from her granddaughter. Mother gave her a basket with food and drink to Little Red Riding Hood and told her, "Don't stray from the path." Okay, I'm sure you're remembering the story now from when you were younger. The girl promised but soon forgot about her mother's warnings. After a while she met a wolf in the woods. He asked her where she was going, and she told him about Granny's bad health and where she lived. The wolf tricked her into stopping and picking some flowers. She did that, and in the meantime the wolf ran to Granny's house. The wolf, pretending to be the granddaughter, entered grandmother's house and ate the lady. Then he dressed in the nightgown and waited for Little Red Riding Hood. And lots of you'll remember this is where he plays the trick on Little Red Riding Hood. So it says, when she came in, the famous dialogue about great arms and great ears and great teeth followed. Oh, grandmother, what great big ears you've got, what great big teeth you've got, and all of that. After that, the wolf ate the girl and took a nap. And then finally, what happened soon after, a huntsman came by the house, the woodcutter, and heard snoring. He entered cautiously, saw the sleeping monster in Granny's bed, and guess what happened? He cut open the wolf's stomach and saved the grandmother and the daughter, and they all lived very happily ever after. So that was a very, very quick summary of the story of Little Red Riding Hood. Just to remind you of the story, I'm sure that you enjoyed it when you were much younger. And that's the story that we're going to be retelling now, and we're going to do, as you can see from the top corner here, where it says Evil Red Riding Hood. We're going to write this story with a twist. We're going to make it a little bit more year 6 in style, and actually what we're going to do is we're going to retell the story from the perspective of the wolf. And we've got a picture of the wolf here, and it says, "She's the villain, not me." Okay, so we're going to write it with the wolf's take on it in mind. Okay, I've done this with a few different year groups in the past, and with year 6 in the past. They absolutely loved it because they loved telling the story of Little Red Riding Hood being a little bit mean, a little bit evil, a little bit sinister, and actually the wolf was all very innocent in it. I mean, maybe a lot of the story was a lie, and children really loved doing this one. So I think you will quite like this unit. Before we start though, what do you think the key features of a narrative are? And what might be on the key to success for writing a narrative, for writing a short story, which is what we'll be doing. Just pause the video, have a think, and then unpause it, and we'll go through what some of the key features are for writing a story, a narrative. Okay, so some of the features of a narrative, well, you'll include dialogue, which will be punctuated correctly with inverted commas. And we've been doing that a lot through the last few weeks. We did it with the Room 13 writing, so we'll be revisiting that again. A story, well, this one's going to have a clear beginning and middle and end. Obviously, the story of Little Red Riding Hood does have a clear beginning, middle and end, and we'll be doing the same. We'll be mirroring that structure. We're going to have a change of time in ours, so it's not necessarily a feature you'll see in all stories, but we're going to start with present tense to start, and then we're going to flash back. So we're going to start with the wolf sitting in his armchair, pretending he's still alive, thinking back to the day that he met Little Red Riding Hood and how she ruined his life forever. Okay. We'll obviously have a range of punctuation that we refer to all the time, exclamation marks, question marks, dashes, semicolons, colons, hyphens if needed be. and using that punctuation accurately through your writing. Front adverbial sentence openers, and I've actually got a list of sentence openers that we can refer to in our scaffold sheets that'll help us to link our story together. Other things, expanded noun phrases. This is your description. Things such as a young innocent girl with a ruby red cloak. Well, girl is the noun, young and innocent are the adjectives to describe the girl, as is with a ruby red cloak. So that's the noun is girl, and these adjectives describe the noun, so we call them expanded noun phrases. We've been doing those since year 3. Okay, so description of the different things in the story. Prepositional phrases will be useful, and they just where things are, beside the forest, inside the cottage, things like that. Explaining where things are in the story. And obviously a mixture of sentence types. Short clause sentences, longer clause sentences with conjunctions and relative clauses. So in our narrative that we're going to write all the way from start to finish, you will use all of these different things. Okay? Now, just to remind you, we're going to retell the story from the perspective of the wolf. We're going to say that the wolf was actually very innocent in all this. Actually, the wolf's a bit of a nice guy. And the story's been told over many years is kind of a bit of a lie. He wasn't bad. It was Little Red Riding Hood who was bad. So our story, it says in the top corner there, she's evil, you know. Our story is going to be written from the perspective of the wolf. In our version, the wolf is going to be the victim and Little Red Riding Hood the villain. For an example plot twist, what you might have is, and one you might use is Little Red Riding Hood picks on the wolf in the forest, and what the wolf actually does is he races to grandmother's cottage to play a trick back on her. It was actually Little Red Riding Hood who was evil in the first place. She was actually kind of bullying the wolf. All right, so she's the nasty one. And there's a brief sort of plan for a structure for this, so you get the idea. This is what we're going to do as we go through it. We'll start in the present day with the wolf sort of thinking back on his life and thinking back to the day that he met evil Red Riding Hood. And then we go back to the story, and we'll use the same sort of structure. Once upon a time, there was a little girl called Little Red Riding Hood, lived in the forest, etc. And then we're going to have where the wolf meets evil Red Riding Hood, and maybe the little bit of interaction that will come later. We will have the same bit where they meet at the cottage. There's going to be a slight different twist on it, you know, how that meeting goes. And then we could probably flash back to right now again as we sit here in the wolf's, maybe in his little cottage that he lives in now by his fire. Okay. So to help with this, what I've done is I've written a version of Little Red Riding Hood, but from the perspective of the grandmother, as a bit of a sort of a waggle structure we can use. And then what you guys will do is you'll write your version from the perspective of of the wolf. Okay. Now I've written it all the way through the story on here, but I'm not going to read all of it today. What I'll do is I'll read the part that we're going to concentrate on today, which is the opening to our story. And it says, Little Red Riding Hood from grandmother's perspective. Sitting here in my armchair, I think back to that fateful day. The day my granddaughter was so nearly tricked by the big bad wolf. Once upon a time there lived a small girl called Little Red Riding Hood. She's my beloved granddaughter. She lives happily with her parents beside a dark, gloomy forest. I, myself, lived in a small cottage on the other side of the forest. However, deep in the forest there lived a truly terrifying creature, the big bad wolf. Grandmother's poorly, said Little Red Riding Hood's mother one day. Please take this cake, but be sure not to stop along the way. That morning my granddaughter set off through the deep dark forest. The trees that towered overhead sheltered her from the rain that poured down from above. Suddenly she heard a noise. She looked around, but there was nothing to be seen. Then all of a sudden in the distance, yes, it was him, the big bad wolf. Now that's written from grandmother's perspective, but it's got a very similar take to the original story in terms of there's the wolf seen as bad, and the Little Red Riding Hood seen as really nice and great. Okay, now there's my opening from the grandmother's perspective, and here are your key success when you write your one. So at the start of your opening, which is what we're going to concentrate on today, at the start of your opening you're going to have the present day to start with, so you're thinking back, but instead of it being the grandmother thinking back or Little Red Riding Hood thinking back, it's going to be you as the wolf thinking back. Okay, you will then describe the forest a bit like they've done here briefly, but you'll describe the forest from the perspective of the wolf, and obviously the wolf loves his forest because it's his forest, so it's going to be quite a pleasant description of the forest. You're going to describe or give some clues as to what Little Red Riding Hood's like, and I've given her the nickname of Red here. And the words I put here, these words you can use as a bit of a scaffold, things like spiteful, manipulative, a bit of a brat, a bit vicious, evil, sly, sneaky, nasty, scheming, devious. She's going to be the evil one from our eyes, okay? The wolf, he's innocent. It's this evil Little Red Riding Hood, and the story's been changed over the years, and everyone thinks he's the bad guy. We might have a brief conversation between Red and her mother, and what I want you to finish with today is finish just before Red meets Wolf for the first time. So we're just mirroring the opening here to our story, but just writing it from the perspective of the wolf. Don't go on too far though, otherwise you'll lose the flow of the writing, so you need to follow it day by day with me. So what I've done for you today is I've created a scaffold sheet that you can use to help you. It's got lots of sentence openers to support you as you're writing if you're struggling for ways to start a sentence, okay, and there's different versions there. It's got my version of the grandmother's version, okay, and we've got the opening there as it's written out, which I read earlier. And your part, the story opening, the flashback, you're going to think back to that dreadful day. You set the scene, describe the setting. Remember, this is from Wolf's perspective, so it will be in his beloved forests. Finish just before Red and the wolf speak for the first time. I'm going to actually add that in, for the first time, okay, before they meet, basically. You've got your key success there that you can refer to. And as a stretch, is to use an accurate range of punctuation. You might use italics to demonstrate quite how evil and sly Red is, and I'll show you that in a minute when I model it. As well as detailed description of the forest and the character's actions, and high quality from start to finish. That's what will take your writing to another level. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a version up from the perspective of the wolf, and model to you how I would do it, and you can watch to see how I do it myself using the scaffold to support me. What I will say is when you come to write your versions, yes, you can have a look at what I've written, you can use some of the ideas, but try and make it your own as well, and use your own ideas as to how you want to write it. So I'm going to give it a title, Evil Red Riding Hood, with the story with a twist. Okay, so there's my title. So we know it's got a slight twist to the story. By the wolf. There we go. Underneath. So we know this is written from the wolf's perspective. Like I say, children absolutely love doing this in the past. They love writing about evil Red Riding Hoods. So I'm going to look back at the example version, and here it says we've got this present tense at the start. So sitting here in my armchair, I think back to that fateful day, the day my granddaughter was so nearly tricked by the big bad wolf. So again, I'm going to mirror that. I'm going to say sitting here in my beloved forest, thinking back to the fateful, to that awful day, comma, I think about how different things could have been if it wasn't for that awful girl, that wretched, spiteful little madam. And we know who I'm talking about here. We're talking about Little Red Riding Hood. She twisted everything. Every word a fabrication of the truth. So every word a lie, basically. And now, comma, here I am. Me, the villain. Her, the victim. Victim, apparently. Or that's how everyone sees it anyway. What lies? What truly despicable lies? Okay, so that bit there is my flashback to start, sort of the present day thing, and then we're going to think back. So we're in the present tense, sitting here in his forest, thinking about that awful day, and now we're going to flash back into the past. And again, we can use the same sort of structure. So once upon a time there lived a small girl. Okay, but it's all very nice about Little Red Riding Hood. We're going to make this a little bit more year 6-y, and we're going to make it a little bit more nasty about Little Red Riding Hood. She was not a nice person. Once upon a time there lived I'm going to say a little girl is normal. But unfortunately, comma, sentence opener, that little girl was, well, she was what only can be described as, I was going to say a little, I'm going to say a manipulative little brat. That means they make everything work for themselves. I'm going to put Little Red Riding Hood, they called her. I'm going to say Evil Red Riding Hood, more like. Okay, so this is my perspective as the wolf. She lived, so I'm going to say where she lived. She lived with her mother on the edge of the forest. My forest. This is variation sentence types. Okay, she lived with her forest on the edge of the forest. My forest. Now, in grandmother's story, it talks about the forest being quite dark and gloomy, but I love this forest. I'm the wolf. This is my forest. I'm going to say trees lined the skyline with beams of sunlight occasionally peeping through the branches. I want it to sound really nice, this forest. To me, it really was a special place full of creatures great and small. Okay, my very own wooded wonderland. I was going to say forested, but wooded wonderland sounds better with the illustration. Many people suggested the forest was a dangerous and perilous place. So again, we're getting to the idea that people say it's horrible, they say it's bad, but actually it isn't. It really isn't. However, I loved it. Peaceful, green, and the sky was always blue. At least to me it was. Anyway, so we get the idea. The wolf's quite a nice guy. All right, he's lived in this lovely this wooded forest. It's always sunny. It's a really nice place. But there's this person they call the Little Red Riding Hood. Well, she's not a nice person, despite what the stories might tell you, despite what you might have heard. Actually, that gives me an idea at the top here. What truly despicable lies. Whatever you heard about Little Red Riding Hood, forget it all. It's all a lie. Okay, and then we go into our description. So here we sort of describe, well, there's this little girl, she's called Little Red Riding Hood, however, we don't see her like that. And she lives on the edge of the forest, and the forest itself is a really, really nice place, and it's my home. However, I loved it. The sky was blue, peaceful green, and the sky was all blue. At least to me it was anyway. It was home, my home. Full stop. Okay, so we've set the scene. We've described the forest and the wolf's perspective, and I've used some of this vocabulary to describe Little Red Riding Hood. Now I've used some of those words: manipulative, evil, sneaky. Okay, so we get the idea of what sort of character she's going to be. And then in this story, grandmother's version, it says grandmother's poorly. Little Red Riding Hood to go and take us some cake, like so. So we can have some conversation. We can use that structure. We'll go to early one morning. Little Red Riding Hood. Now I don't want to keep calling her Little Red Riding Hood, so I'm going to speak to the reader here and go use dashes for parenthesis, or red, as I shall nickname her from now on, so I can just call her Red from now on, was sent on a trip by her parents to visit her grandmother. Semicolon. Okay, use my range of punctuation. Why did they send her? They sent her because her grandmother had fallen ill. So there's a truth behind the story. She was sent to go and see her grandmother, but because I know she's quite a nasty character, I'm going to change the way that the speech goes. So I think Red's mother will say something to her first. Grandmother's poorly, said Red's mother. Yeah, I can refer to her as Red now because I've explained to the reader that's what I'm going to call her. Can you take her this cake, dear? Oh, that sounds like a nice request. But now this is going to be our first indication to, other than the wolf telling us that she's not a very nice girl, I'm going to use speech to show what a not very nice girl she is. And this isn't in the original story. This is our take on it. Oh, ... If I must. I'm going to use these italics here, this a diagonal line, to show that she's really aggressive, and the way that she said must, that's referred to that stretch there. Let's demonstrate how sly and controlling and evil she is through our speech. Because that's the kind of thing a bratty child would say, isn't it? Oh, if I must, replied Red angrily, full stop. She can say something else. She can say something really nasty. I have to do everything. I'm going to put that in italics as well. So, yeah, diagonal. Let's make it on a slight slant, that word. I have to do everything around here. I'm going to say, instead of replied, grunted Red angrily. I have to do everything around here. Make sure I get my speech right. Remember, I've done inverted commas, said who spoke, and dropped a line. Okay, revising some of those skills we've used earlier. So from that line, I can see quite clearly that what the wolf's saying clearly is true. She does not sound very pleasant, does she? Her grandmother's ill, but she's responded quite nastily to it. Off she stomped towards Grandma's house. Notice the apostrophe for possession. House belongs to Grandma, that's what it needs that. The cake tucked inside a basket her mother had given her. Okay. Before long, she made her way to the forest within which Grandma's house would eventually be found, because that's where it is. And I'm going to leave it there. It was there that I first encountered her. ... So that's the bit that I want you to kind of finish at. I want you to get to this point just before Red and the wolf meet, not waffle, meet for the first time. Okay, stop before that and we'll continue the story tomorrow. All right, but hopefully you've got the idea from what I've modelled there of how we're going to, one, make it a lot more year 6 quality. Okay, so we're going to up the standards a bit. You can see lots of the parenthesis used there, range of punctuation, good use of language, dangerous, perilous, manipulative, including dialogue. Okay, so it's a very year 6 standard narrative, but also we have this complete twist to it. This character, this person we know has been all very sweet and innocent. She's anything but, actually. From the wolf's perspective, she actually was in the wrong all the way through. Okay, the start bit here, just all about the wolf sitting at home, thinking back, so it's obviously a long way in the future, thinking back to this awful day. And then here, we've got this description of the forest, of the wood, from the wolf's perspective, and some clues and some information about Little Red Riding Hood that lived on the edge of the forest. And then we go to this part here where it talks about what the mother asks Little Red Riding Hood to do, which is actually from the story. She does ask her to go and take something for her grandmother who's poorly. But this line here is really key, isn't it? Oh, if I must, grunted Red angrily. I have to do everything around here. And if you want to, you could do more dialogue than that, couldn't you, to really show how evil she is. And then finally, off she stomps towards the house, or towards the forest, towards the house, and then leave it just before Red meets Wolf for the first time. And here we're going to have the first dialogue the next day, we'll do on Wednesday, the first interaction between Little Red Riding Hood and the wolf. Okay, I hope you're enjoying it, guys. Have a go at that. Children in the past have absolutely loved this one. They love the idea that Little Red Riding Hood is not so sweet and innocent. In fact, she's quite nasty, and they absolutely love playing this guy. All right. When you're done, make sure you check it back against the key success to see if you've done everything. All right, guys, have fun with that. I can't wait to see how you get on. Bye bye.